today's project. We'll tear this section off here. This whole area is rotten. There's mold all over this from underneath, and it's actually rotted the drywall inside, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and cut this out, and with damage like this, you just rip out until you get to something good you can build back from. So the challenge is going to be getting all this flashing to get back in there right, because it is part of the brickwork, so I've got to be able to reuse it. Alright, shingles off. Just use a flat bar, bust the shingle loose, and then go up underneath to bust the one up underneath it. It's about 40 degrees out. These are pretty easy to work with when it's cold. However, if the shingles are real bad, you will end up cracking more than you need to. Sometimes it's better if it's a little warmer. That way they don't break as often. But anybody that's laid roofing, this goes together like a jigsaw puzzle. I'm just busting out what I need to make the repair. I'm going to try to find a rafter and cut on it. I'm going to replace all this. I may have to go up around the top of the chimney, but we'll get teared into it now. Alright, I got the tar paper off. I'm going to have to take the gutter loose. You can see this 1x6 is rotten. That's rotten. Pokes all the way through that. There's a rafter here. There should be another rafter about right here. I'm just going to tear this piece out and see what we got. But I know I'm at least going to have to replace this section and some of this fascia stuff. Alright. So, that's a 2x4 and a little bit of decking. That 2x4 used to go right here. You can see I'm going to have to replace that. I'm going to have to scab onto this and replace this 1x6 up front. There was actually a snake in here at one point in time. You can see the skin here. A little bit of damage up in there. Most of that's just surface stuff, nothing too bad. I am going to replace this 2x4, scab onto this 1x6, and I'm going to cut this back, probably even to the edge of the chimney right there. Then replace this and this. So, not too bad. Less damage than I thought. Alright, so I just tore this off here. You gotta be careful when you do this, because you do not want to damage that sheet metal. That's the flashing, unless it's got damage. This one doesn't, I don't believe. Although I will have to check for leaks, because it looks like the water came from right around the base of the chimney. This is what's set up underneath there, and it's all rotten. So I am going to have to go all the way around. Probably going to have to go back that way, at least a joist or two, and tear this piece of wood out and replace it. So I'm going to tear some more shingles out that way, more back that way. Try to get this piece of plywood out from underneath there. So, more to repair than I thought. It does look like the header is rotten right around the top of the fireplace. Right through here. You should be able to do that with the 2x8. Well, that's what I get for optimistic thinking. I noticed when I came back here to clean these leaves off earlier, where I started, that there was a soft spot here. I'm going to have to tear this all off. Probably all the way to the other side. I'm even going to have to tear off some of this upper decking, so I'm going to have to keep coming up. And as you can see underneath there, I've even got some rafters that are rotten. Unless there's extensive damage to the rafters, I will splice to those or scab onto them to give us a new surface to nail to. I'm not going to go in and unless more than half of that 2x4 is rotting out, I'll scab to it. It's a lot harder to replace an entire rafter, so I'm going to keep going until I get to the end of this board. Alright, so I have it demoed. I said earlier I had soft spots up here. This leak was somewhere in here, so I'd be willing to bet, although it doesn't look like that chimney's been serviced in forever, somebody at some point knocked the hole in the shingles at this point. That's where the bad stuff stopped. I don't see. It's usually good to walk upstream from the leak. It doesn't have to be right in line with that. It could be over this way. Usually it is. The water will run straight downhill, but it could be it finds a jagged spot in the tar paper or weak spot in the shingles where it starts to run down. Everything up this way looks good, but tore it all out. Tear it out, that way you can piecemeal the shingles back together and pull your nails out. You also need to get up underneath here and get the nails that are holding the shingle that used to be overlapping. And like these here, these nails up underneath here. Otherwise, when you go to slide the shingle in, you may have to trim it, or realize that you got a nail underneath there you may be hitting. So pull all your loose nails out. That's not supposed to happen. That's a 2x6. As you can see, I can tear it apart with my hands. This one has some rot as well. It's good up this way. This has a pan sealing in there. So this one is not bad. It's rotten down this way, but it's good up here on the main rafter. So I'm going to tie back in up this way and replace this piece. I'm going to bring this one up even further because it's bad. It's got a good probably 2.5, 3 inches there that's still solid. But the whole top of that's rotting it out. But more than likely, that's where the water was leaking in at, and it just ran down the beam over many, many years. This one's good up here. Down here, not so much. So I'll end up cutting this off, cutting this one off. I'm going to leave the main rafter and scab onto it. Scab basically means I'm just going to cut. I'm going to match this pattern and cut a 2x6 and nail it right into this all the way down. And I'll take the rotten stuff off, but it will offset the marks about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to add another one in here. So I've got to scab those, and then down here, that whole entire header is gone. I'm not going to do that from the outside. Like I mentioned earlier, this does have drywall damage on the inside that I got to repair. But just on the other side, see that board? There should be a full 2x4 across there. That's the header. Or the top plate, actually. The top plate slash header that goes there. So I've got to replace that, but like I said, I'm going to do that from the inside. Basically what I'm going to do, scab onto these. Once I get those scabbed onto, replace all 3 of those. I'm going to come on this side, put my board in here. That way I have something to nail this to. Replace this a little bit down here. Put new sheets of plywood on, tar paper, and then re-shingling. That'll take care of the outside, and then probably next video I'll take you through the details of what I'm going to do inside. It's probably going to be just as extensive. See, there's two 2x4s that make up the top plate. The top one is gone. So in this section of the pan, I'm going to have to rip the drywall off in front of the fireplace and replace all the wood that's rotten. So this will be a 2-phase project. And your 2x4 should not look like that. Pretty extensive damage. And I bought two 2x6x8s, a 1x6 treated for this facial plate here for the fascia. I got a 2x4 that I had from home, 5/8 sheet of plywood, and a couple tubes of roofing caulk. That should take care of the materials I need to put this back into working order, at least what I'm going to repair from the roof. And then I'll have another video on the inside repairs, but let me get that. Alright, take 2 on this one. I'm about 100% sure this was actually termite damage, so there probably wasn't any water leak up this way that I was chasing. I was just chasing rotten wood that they've been eating. That's what all the dirt inside the wood is. Those are termites. Water damage would have been a lot different. There was water damage but underneath this flashing, so there was some damage there. But the structural 2x6 damage I'm replacing is all termite stuff. So they can eat up stuff quick. So I'll tear all the termite damage stuff out and splice it back in. I still have the same solution, but I'm not chasing a water leak upstream. That's actually termite damage. Alright, let me show you a trick that I've learned over the years. I've never framed houses for a living or even had it as a summer job, so a lot of this stuff I learned just trial and error. So if you're a framing contractor, I'm sure you're going to laugh at this. This is how I figured out. So out of all the wood I pulled out, most of it was totally damaged. I did have one angle that was original from when the house was built. This doesn't have any termite damage. The other end of the board's trashed. That one angle can give me just about everything I need. It's going to tell me the pitch of the roof, and then measurements can tell me what my bird's mouth is. So it's kind of, let's see. I can get my damn stick going here. So you can do this a couple of different ways. That is a 7 pitch. 7 common. So it's a 7/12 pitch roof. So what I did is cut me a template. If you don't want to use up your good wood, use a piece of scrap, 2x4 or something. It's good to have something the same thickness as the rafters for your bird's mouth. So I just cut this end at 7/12. It's going to go in like that. This end up here is going to sit on the header for the pan ceiling. As you can see, I had a bunch of trial and errors here. So I used that same piece of wood to give me what, because this was the bird's mouth. That's what that part right there is called. So that was what set up against the header before. I just used that as my opening of my bird's mouth. And then I took the piece up there, I measured the top of this. So where this was setting at one point in time, I measured from the chimney back to pretty even with where the header for the pan ceiling was. I got me a rough measurement for what that was, and it was just taking several cuts to figure out where the bird's mouth is. And then once I got that figured out, I just brought it in, made a pencil mark on my rafter up there, and that told me where the top of my bird's mouth is. And when I finally got all that done, I put this up there and set it down in there, and it perfectly lines up. So, little tricks I've learned over the years. Like I said, if you're a framing contractor, you could probably look at it and say, well, it needs to be here, here, and here. But I've never been one, and this works. Those are fit perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of them. Just thought I'd give you that little tip. Alright, so I didn't get to show you the rafter splicing. It wasn't the prettiest. Hard to find something to actually screw into when they eat that much of the board, but I sliced stacked in as far as I could get. Put new decking down, and then the next phase was to clean off this crack down here. All the water from the roof runs downhill, hits this metal flashing, and then goes one side or the other. As you can see, you got a couple cracks there. There's a crack there. There's a pretty good crack there. And then there's a couple pinholes. And over here we got a pretty good sized crack, which is where a lot of the rot was. So it was kind of twofold. There was water damage on the wood. All the wood that was underneath this flashing was rotten, like water rotten. But all the rafters and the wood up this direction was all termite damage. So I don't know how that works with a termite contract. Sometimes I think it's got to be all termite damage and no water, or they kind of blame it on the other one. But those 2x4s come apart with my hand, so I know for a fact we had some termites in here. So I'm going to go ahead and put the felt paper down. Alright, so caulk's not going to do that. I went to the hardware store to get some flashing. They didn't have any roof flashing. It's ridiculous right now trying to get anything at hardware stores. Caulk's not going to do it. I have never used this stuff before. They had 3 different brands. This is the only one that said anything about being for flashing. The other one's just for windows or doors sealants. Don't know if it's going to work very well. Also, the other ones wanted it to be a little warmer outside. It's right at 45, which is the minimum temperature that they want you to install this at. And leave a comment if you've ever used any of this stuff. This particular brand, I never have, but I've heard good stuff. So I'm going to put this down over the top of all that to seal that up. So between the caulk, this sealant, plus tar paper and shingles, I think that'll take care of that leak. And I've got the termite damaged out, so just buttoning it up now. We'll see what happens. There's the aftermath. It is stuck. I imagine it'd be better if it was warmer out, but it is a thick tar-like tape and then that aluminum coating. So I shoved it up underneath the flashing that's into the brick and comes down the wall. I think it's going to hold. I don't see any issue with it. Probably pretty good stuff, but let me know if you've ever used that stuff before. A little nervous about doing this on a chimney because these are notorious for leaking. We'll see what happens. Alright, she's all back together. Tar papered it. Put the shingles on. Some of them are sticking up, but when it's cold out, that's going to happen. Once it gets hot, they'll stick down. You can tell the difference. You ever been on a roof job, patch job, make sure you let the customer know. It's like siding. There's no way you can match the shingle wear perfectly. This is pretty close though. It's on the back side of the chimney, so it's not that big a deal anyway. But so I got the outside done. It's all good and sturdy, sealed up. I got to clean up, and I'll come back and do the inside on another day. So, have a good one.